Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So today we got a different style repair video. It's not going to be focused towards a specific car, even though the vehicle behind me is an 18 Ford Explorer with a 3.7 liter. This one's an ex-police interceptor or cop car. And what we're going to be replacing on it today is the connector for the purge solenoid. It looks like the tab had gotten hot over the years and it broke off, and someone tried fixing it, but they didn't quite do it right. So we're going to go in there, cut our wiring, go ahead and solder on new wires and a new connector on there, and basically fix it the way it should be from the factory, so this car doesn't have any more issues. Now before we go ahead and begin, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button down below. Definitely smash the like button because it helps the channel out. And with that said, let's go ahead and get started on today's video. So what we're going to be fixing today is this connector that goes into the evap purge solenoid. And what has wound up happening here is these connectors get really hot and brittle, and when you go to push the tab down to get it off, that little tab that you're supposed to push tends to break off. And what somebody did here is they just used a zip tie to hold this together. Now that's not the correct way of doing it. This vehicle is actually setting a code for this because it's not holding on there tight, I'm assuming, but I don't know how well the camera's going to pick it up, but you can see the zip tie is just ran through and kind of routed all the way around there. There's not a lot of good lighting here, but this is what we're going to be fixing. Now, how we're going to be fixing this is going to be quite simple. For some manufacturers, you are lucky enough to get certain repair kits, or I guess you can say pigtails, and Ford has you covered. Now, Ford makes this kit. It's a WPT 905, and basically it's the connector with the wires, and I believe in here there's also the shrink tubing for everything. So what we're going to do is cut this old one off and put in our new one, solder it on, seal it up, and repair the connector. So now that we know what we're doing, our first step is to take our cutters here, and we're just going to go ahead and cut off our zip tie because, well, that's not going to do us any more justice. And for those of you that are curious, see what they kind of did there? They looped it, made a whole looks like there's two of them all together that they used to make it long enough. But either way, we're gonna go ahead and scrap that. And if I am correct, this should just pop out. Yep, just like that. And here's the thing, it looks like someone might have done some wiring or something here, because there is some electrical tape. And one thing I will say, I do know that this engine has had critters in it. I don't know how well the camera's gonna pick it up, but you can see all the stuff on the intake. There may be a mouse or a rat that has lived here at one point in time. Maybe it chewed it up. They tried repairing the wires and that caused the issue. But either way, our concern is fixing up this connector so we can get rid of our circuit codes that we have. So that's what we're going to be doing. So typically where I like to start on a repair like this is to examine this and see where my tape is. Now, they actually cut it pretty good here. We're able to find the end of our tape, and we're just going to unravel it. Now, judging by this tape feels like it hasn't been on here that long, so this may have been something recent. But what we're going to do is go ahead and take off this tape. You can see that was a pretty good amount there, so we're going to go ahead and just throw that away. And then I'm going to inspect my harness here. Now, this one does have this little adapter piece that kind of folds the wires over and holds them in at an angle. Let me see if this part of it comes off. It should. I don't know if it's going to be built into the piece or not, but I do believe it comes off because if that's how they intended it to be, I'm going to try to save it. I don't want to come in here and just ruin it. So it looks like you can pry that up and we should be able to slide it off. So we're going to save this piece here and see if we can implement that into our new connector, which hopefully we are able to. So now that we have that off, one thing that I always like to check, especially to make sure you got the right one, is go ahead and take your connector, the new one that you are going to be using, and this should probably be the first thing to check, but just make sure it clips in, and in this scenario it does. Ours is nice and good, so it's the correct one, and it looks like we do have that little spot, so we are going to be able to utilize what we need to in order to make this work. So now that we have all of those checked, we are going to proceed and dissect this a little more. Now, I'm not going to need this connector, or at least the rest of it. So what I'm gonna probably do is cut this pretty close here, but I have a razor blade and I'm going to peel this back a little bit if I can. And you want to be careful to avoid possible damage to any wires, but let's go ahead and peel back the factory tape here, or what seems to be factory tape. Now, electrical work sometimes can be a little bit annoying. I know there's a lot of people out there that probably avoid doing stuff like this, but this isn't so bad. Just a matter of getting in here and getting stuff opened up, especially when stuff is taped up with electrical tape. Sometimes can be a little bit of a pain. But just like that, we are able to make some room and access our wires. And that should be pretty good right there. I don't think we need to go any deeper, because I'm probably going to wind up cutting it pretty close here. Now, one thing I always suggest if you're doing something like this, you'll notice that Ford gives you a nice pigtail with wiring. And as long as all of your wires are black, you're good. You can just wire it up pretty simply. But overall, I'm just joking. This is a 2-wire setup. I've done some of these Ford connectors where you have 17 wires and they're all green or black or whatever color Ford uses. And it can get a little bit tedious. So this one's really easy. What I always suggest you do if you're doing this at home is basically put the 2 connectors next to each other and just kind of see where your colors are and where they're going to go. I like doing this 1 wire at a time, and I'm going to show you guys how I do that. But first things first, I'm going to want to cut my really long wires here on our new connector. So I'm going to trim this down a little bit. Let me get some tools and we're going to start cutting into our wires. So now that we have notated where our wiring goes and how it's set up, it's going to be pretty simple. I'm going to cut my wires here on our connector. We're not going to go really long, but the way I like to do this is 1 wire at a time. Do not get crazy with this, and cut both at the same time. And one thing I really recommend is I'm going to cut these wires pretty flush right now, meaning they're going to be close to one another. But the way I like to do it is I'm going to stagger them once I solder them, not to make them super thick. So now we have a good reference point. The good thing about leaving a little bit of wiring on there is you still got your connector. You know how it plugs in, and you can easily reference the colors on this one. But if this thing had, 5 or 6 wires or more, I would probably do them 1 by 1. And that's how I initially was going to do this, but fighting the connector being on 1 wire back and forth, I just figured cut them off. It's 2 wires. It's really hard to screw this up. But never say never, because it can happen. Now, what we're going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and set this up here just for orientation reasoning, but it's pretty simple. It's going to be my green, and then it's going to be my, I believe this is a white brown wire that we're going to be using. So we got our connector cut off. Now, we don't need all this wiring, so we're going to chop this harness down as well. So now that we got our car side wires all prepped up, what I'm going to do is come in here, and on our connector you can actually go ahead and cut these wires. We're going to shorten it up. Now, our connectors are not live, so you can cut these wires 2 at a time. It's not really going to make a big difference because there's no power going through it. The reason why you want to cut these individually 1 by 1 is because you don't want to cut both of them together and possibly short out a fuse or a computer or a CAN bus system, whatever is going on there. So always 1 by 1 when it comes to that. Now we have our connector, and we already know if we look at this connector up here, the one that we took off, so that's kind of where we're going to be at. So we need to put our green one on this side, and then we have our white and brown wire on that side. So what we're going to do here, and where I always like to begin, is I'm going to take my wire strippers and we are going to strip our wire just like so. You don't need a whole lot, just something like this or whatever you're comfortable with. At the end of the day, it's however you like to do it. And then what I'm going to do also is come in here and we're going to strip off a little bit on the car as well. Now, before we go any further, if you're going to be soldering this, you're going to be using some sort of shrink connector, and Ford does give you 2 shrink connectors in the pack. And what I always like to do is go ahead and insert them in, if you can, right at this stage like this. So I'm going to do this one at a time. Now these are a little bit too big for our repair area. I might have to cut a little bit off of it because we're not going to be utilizing that big of a repair. So I'm just going to give myself a little room. And normally I wouldn't cut this down, but the main reason is that we're not working with a lot of harness room here. We want to get this heat shrink connector as far back so we can do our solder and not have to melt it on there prematurely. So, you know, just be mindful of that. What I always like to do is go ahead and just spin my wires on here. Now, there's a million ways to solder a connection. Please don't go in the comments telling me that you're not supposed to spin them, you're not supposed to do this, you're not supposed to do that. Listen guys, there's a lot of different ways to do something. This has always been my method. It's worked for years, and that's what I like to do, so that's how I'm going to do it. And if you don't like it, well, guess what? You can still follow the video and solder it your way. But anyway, now that I have my connections ready, what I need to do is go ahead and turn on my butane torch, and I should have done this earlier to get this warm, but I just use something like this. Pretty simple. I believe I picked this one at a home improvement store. I'm just going to go ahead and fire her up, just like that, and now I'm going to let this warm up while we're waiting for our solder iron to get warm. One little trick, now when you're soldering this, you'll notice this is going to want to move on you. I take a little bit of tape, put it on the end there, and just firmly hold it in place. It'll keep that shrink tube from getting in the way where it shouldn't. So just a little quick trip for that, or quick trick I should say. So now we're going to go ahead and line this up right there. And what I'm going to do is just try to figure out what's the best way to leverage my wires. Now wires can be stuck a certain way for a while, so you want to kind of find their happy place. And I think I'm going to be doing it just like this. Now what I like to do is take them, kind of line them up like an X, and then what I'm going to do is just fold them over on each other just like so. And this is actually really difficult to do with the gloves on, but to be honest with you, I don't want to take my gloves off because this engine bay definitely has had critters in here, and they have definitely used the bathroom in this engine, and I do not want to get that stuff over my skin or any open wounds that I may have. It's not really health conscious to do so. So I've gone ahead and I put my wires together. Kind of did a X pattern. So the way you want to do them is, let's say this is one wire and this is the other. You kind of want to do this with them and then have them roll up on each other and kind of do like a little twist. That's how I like to do it. Some people like to put the strands together where they just kind of meet like this and they kind of mellow together. You can do that way too. I mean, whichever way works for you. But for me, I like to do the X pattern. So now I'm going to take my iron here. We're going to add a little bit of our solder. And I'm going to come in here like a ninja, hopefully. And this is the hard part about soldering. Wires on an engine bay, sometimes stuff moves. But we're just going to hold our soldering iron on our wire and just get it nice and warm. And we're going to let the solder flow. If you constantly have to move your iron when you're soldering something, you're not doing it right. So you should normally just precondition it with some solder, be able to hold it on one spot, and it should flow through. Now when you're done, this is going to be very difficult to show, and I barely got my camera set up above and overhead the engine, so I really don't want to move it, but you should be able to see all the little fine little strands in your connection there. You want to make sure you got a nice joint like that, pull on it, make sure it's nice and tight as well. So now what I'm going to do is take my little tape that I used and just put that to the side. And what we're going to do is go ahead and see if our shrink connector covers our area, which I already know this one is going to be plenty good enough. And one thing I forgot to grab is my little torch that I used to mount the shrink connector. So let me grab that here. And what we're going to do is take our torch and we're just going to apply some heat to it and shrink our connector, or our shrink material or vinyl, whatever you want to call it. I call it shrink tubing, but a lot of different people call it a lot of different names, so call it whatever name you're comfortable. Sometimes on this channel, to be upfront, I call things differently than what they are. Kind of have like pet names, I guess, if you want to call them that, for certain things. So this shrink wrap that Ford has given us is a very high quality shrink wrap. Now I don't know if you guys see that, but you see how it's kind of oozing white stuff? That's a really good connector on there, because this is the type that has almost like a silicone material, or I don't know what it is, but basically helps ooze everything, making it watertight. So this is kind of like you just put silicone all over it, making it adhere a lot better. So you're guaranteed not to get any water coming in there. Now, me being me, even though we have this on there, I'm a big fan of taping stuff up. So I'm not gonna let it just right out of here with that. I'm also going to take my tape, and you want to be cautious here. You don't want to over tape it, but what I like to do is get my wiring out of the way, and this is going to be a little difficult when it comes to the second wire. Now, I'm not a tape professional, so if you guys think my tape job sucks, well, you wouldn't be left alone there, because I feel I don't have really good tape skills here. But what I try to do is pull it in nice and tight and give it a couple turns. Now this thing is a nightmare because this wire keeps moving on me right there. See how it wants to come up and creep up on me? So I think one more roll, just like that. Get it nice and tight. Now one thing I'm gonna do that I like to do is I don't just pull the tape and make it really bad looking. I'm gonna come in here and see if I can't cut it, just like so. And then once I get that cut up, you should be left with something like this. Now I initially was thinking of staggering these, but you know, it's not gonna be that much thicker, and this is kind of the part that was exposed in the engine bay to make that little curve. So I think I'm just gonna go ahead and just keep these at the same place. It's not really gonna make it that much thicker. It's gonna be about the size of this wiring loom, and we're pretty much above the wiring loom. We didn't cut any of it off, so we're just gonna have to make this bendable and then, you know, shape it in the form that it was in. Sometimes you may want to do it one way, but another way is a little bit more efficient. So just like we did earlier, we're gonna come in here and we're going to strip off some of our wiring, just like so. Not a whole lot. Do it on both ends. And these two-laid wire strippers, awesome products, guys. Had them for years. If you do use them a lot, they do kind of wear out over the years, but for doing jobs like this, they are wonderful. Now for this one, I'm going to measure out my tubing, and same thing, we're going to give it a little bit of a snip here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that down, and we are going to put this on our connector. And let me grab my tape here from the side, and I just use this tape to hold it from moving on me, because what happens if this moves and you're using your soldering iron, it can get hot and you know, create an issue. So one thing that I like to do, even though we got our first solder done and you know, we've checked this, we pretty much know which way it goes, you can actually lay your connector in there and see that we got the right wire on that side, so we got our green going to that side, and we're comparing it to our old one. You can even plug it in like that if that helps. Now again, I don't really need that. I'm just showing everybody that in case you don't do this every day or you don't have too much experience with it. So what we're gonna do here is kind of the same technique if it allows it, but let me see here if I can do this. These are cut at the right lengths here. My wire is bouching up a little bit, if that's even a word, because I did tape and heat shrink the one side already. But on this one, I do believe need a little bit more to be cut off here. So we're gonna go ahead and just make it slightly bigger. Pull off our wiring a little bit here, just so we can have enough wire to solder onto. And then I don't know how well the camera's gonna pick it up, but we're gonna do our little wraparound technique here. Now, I almost wish I did stagger them, if I'm gonna be quite honest, because I see there's gonna be a little bit of excess here with the way I cut them, but should be able to make it work. But you know, it's not gonna be the end of the world. So we're gonna go ahead and take our solder, and again, just once you get it wet, if you hold up your soldering machine, or whatever you call these things, your iron, that's the name for it, you should be able to solder it. Now, for some reason, let me clean mine off here, because if you leave it running and you got old solder on there, sometimes they don't work as well. So just go ahead and throw it off, get some new solder on there, and then you should be able, just like so, to be able to heat up your wire and get your solder flowing. That's the thing with soldering irons. Since I did the last wire soldered on here that you guys just saw me do, I left it with a bunch of solder on the tip just running, and once the solder is not silver and shiny like this one is, it kind of hazes over. You should basically clean off your tip, because it's not going to flow enough to get into your wire. So same thing with this one. What I'm gonna do, go ahead and check it. We got a nice solder joint, and I do apologize because now it's getting a little tighter in here. I'm gonna take my little tape off, and what we're gonna do is just put our heat shrink tubing over it, just like we did on the other one. And then we're going to fire up our torch, lift up on our wire, and shrink our tubing. And I am a big fan of this sort of shrink tubing. It's delightful when it has that malleability where it releases that little glue stuff on the inside to seal up any water or anything that might get into the connector over time. So just like that, got that heated up, and we should be good. Now I'm gonna let this cool down a little bit, and this is gonna be the difficult part, because you guys can see there that sticky substance got it on my glove because it's still pretty hot. But once you let it cool down here, now the hard part that we're gonna have with this is going to be trying to individually tape it, because if you guys can tell, once you solder it, you can't really get your tape roll to get through on here. Now when this happens, you have one of two choices. You can cut some tape and, you know, predetermined length, go ahead and wrap it up on there. However, that can get a little sloppy. That's actually how I prefer to do it and how I would do it. But since we are in an area where if we ever have to get back in here, we still have plenty of wire, and you know, we can peel back the tape. What I'm going to elect to do, because our first wire here is shielded 2 times, we have our shrink connector, and then we also have our tape. So what I'm gonna do is just line them up side by side, and I'm gonna start taping both of them, because the only reason why I'm putting the second layer of tape on here is just for protection. It's not really gonna add too much, because that shrink tubing is gonna be probably the best protection that it's ever going to need. So what I'm gonna do is just put them side by side here, and again, I don't anticipate anyone ever opening this back up again, but in case they do, it's not gonna be the end of the world. So same thing, just like the other one. I'm just using my first wire as a guide here. What we're gonna do is just wrap it around. And again, if people out there are saying you don't have to tape it, or why are you choosing to tape the two together, it's just, you know, a preference. There's no real wrong way or right way to do this. Well, actually, let me take that back. There is a wrong way to do it. If you didn't tape them or shield your wires and just solder them and put them together and shorted them out, that would clearly be the wrong way of doing things. But, you know, we're not doing that, at least. So
now that we have everything taped up, you guys can see it's not bad. No, looks decent. Rather have it look a little funky and be functional than not functional at all. So now we're gonna open up this nylon shrink tubing here, or wire protector. Now I wish I had some of this stuff. I don't. At least not this small. I have a huge one that I was debating, putting on here, but at the end of the day, I don't have something this small. The only one I have is, I believe, in a 3/8 or ½ inch configuration, which is going to be pretty massive for this. So we're just gonna kind of tuck them in as best as we could. And then what I like to do is grab my tape, and we're gonna tape this up. Now you don't have to get crazy here with the tape, but I'm going to give this connector the best foot forward. So we're just going to wrap it around just like so. We're gonna try to do the best job that we can. So we're just gonna go up to a certain point here. Now remember that our wiring will have to bend at a certain point. So what I'm gonna do is hold off on taping it the rest of the way, and we're going to grab our little plastic angle that we had, and we're gonna go ahead and attach it to our connector. Whew, I thought I lost this. It was on my bench, but I had to take a minute and look for it. So this piece kind of angles the wires. I don't know why they put it on there, but if it was on the first one, I like making things look as factory as they can. So we're gonna slide it back on our connector just like so, and everyone can see that this requires the wires to bend kind of at a 90-degree angle there, which is perfect because it's right before our tape job. And then what we're gonna do is just tape our wires all the way up that 90-degree bend. Now it's gonna be a little tricky here once we get to the 90. I'm gonna try to get it as close as I can, and then we're gonna have to roll it backwards a little bit here, just like so. And notice that I went all the way up to the end of the wire, and it wasn't gonna look as nice. So something like that is what you're achieving for. So I went up, then I came back down. I'm probably gonna cut my tape line right there somewhere in the center, and it'll help out the next guy if anyone ever has to get back into this to replace this at any point. So let's go ahead and peel our tape back a little bit. I really want to be where the camera is, but can't be because we're filming. But cut our tape, and then just go ahead and set it in there, nice and easy. Now that's kind of what we're left with, pretty much as close as you're gonna get to factory. That's how it should be done. And I don't know why they do this way. Like I said, this is rather stupid to me. But what we're gonna do is go ahead and plug in our connector. And I guess there must have been a wire holder here or something, because the way they want you to put it on there, there's a hole. Kind of looks like there's a holder there, or should be a holder. I guess what we can do is we can zip tie the wire there. That would be my only guess. I'm not exactly sure because there was nothing there, but I'm assuming that's what they want you to do. And the reason why I think they're routing it this way is because there's some heat that can come up through here, and then the plastic helps kind of shield this. I actually looked this up because I guess someone had messed with the wiring. They pulled it out before and put it on the opposite side, but that's kind of what Ford was going for with these, something like that. So it's pretty much that simple to do a wiring repair. This thing is not anything really, as you can say, too crazy in terms of wiring. It's pretty basic. So, just a quick short video, show you guys how to do something like this. It's not really a necessity to show it on this car. It's not like every car that you're going to be working on, especially this particular one's going to have this issue. But connections are all pretty much the same. This is how you would attack any sort of outside electrical connection when it comes to your engine harnesses or anything like that. As a matter of fact, this is the way I would do it, whether it's outside the car or inside the car. This is the best way to do it, is solder all of your connections. You'll have a long-lasting connection that way. So now that we have everything done, we are pretty much all set. That is how you wire a new connector when you have a broken tab on your old one.
So we are all said and done. That's how easy it is to replace your connector and solder on a new one and fix it up. Now, before everyone yells at me, I know I'm probably going to catch a lot of flack for one, wearing gloves doing electrical work, because it's very difficult for anyone that's done it with gloves before. It can be annoying with tape and everything. But the main reason is that this engine has had critters in it before, and I've heard some horror stories where if an animal uses the bathroom on your engine and it touches an open wound, you can get pretty sick from it, and I prefer to avoid that if I can. So I'm gonna keep the gloves on for this one, just like I did. But either way, it's pretty simple, quick, and easy. Just cut them off, solder them, heat shrink them, tape them up nicely, make sure they're watertight, and you pretty much will be done just like we did it. So hopefully everyone enjoyed this video. Please comment, like, and subscribe because it definitely helps the channel grow. I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and I'll catch you on the next video.